Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Now, here is your host, Albert Pineda.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Casting for Fun podcast. I am your host, Albert Pineda, coming to you on Wednesday, September 11th, 2024. This week's episode is going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Arcade Fire's debut album, The Funeral. Before we get to that, though, I mean, you just heard me say it. It's 9/11. So I never want to have this day be lost on me, and always reflect on and remember on the tragic events of that day 23 years ago. So I want to just show an insert a news report that talks about the light beams that New York does every single year. I think all the time, really. They have it on to honor and commemorate the tragic events of that day. So let me go ahead and insert this audio clip, and then I'll share a few words, and then, of course, I'll get into the podcast.
Two powerful beams of light cut through the darkness over Manhattan Thursday as the 9/11 Memorial and Museum conducted a test of its annual Tribute in Light. 88 large spotlights arranged in the shape of the Twin Towers illuminated from the roof of the Battery parking garage just blocks from Ground Zero. It's a rehearsal for the heartfelt display that will shine bright next Wednesday, marking 23 years since that solemn day in 2001.
These twin beams of light shine up into the night sky. They remind us of those we lost, those we miss still today. They also remind us of the resilience of this city in the aftermath of the attacks.
One by one, each switch was flipped, sending beams of light piercing into the night sky. The glow of beams offering a somber yet striking tribute that has become a tradition for New Yorkers. Since its first appearance 6 months after the 9/11 attacks, the lights have served as a symbol of remembrance of the nearly 3,000 lives lost in the tragedy and those who have died since due to related illnesses.
It's an affirmation of our strength, of how we came together, and it reminds us, even no matter what is happening elsewhere in the world, of the compassion.
The beams so powerful they can be seen from up to 60 miles away under clear skies. The installation is made possible by Con Edison.
Helping people who never were here for 9/11 understand and remember not only what we lost on 9/11, but how we came together as a city, as a community, as a country to respond and rebuild afterwards.
Yeah, it's really tremendous that the city of New York does that and has the light beams up to honor and commemorate the tragic events of that day and to those who lost their lives. Looking back, I mean, I never ever want to forget what happened. I mean, I can distinctly remember where I was. I was in Brazil doing missionary service for the church when I heard about it in September 11th of 2001. And every day I always just want to live the best that I can, recognize that I have my loved ones with me and that I'm blessed with good health, and that there's struggles. Sure, everyone goes through struggles and hardships, but recognize how privileged I am and how precious life is. And, reflecting back on the events of September 11th helps me gain a deeper perspective and appreciation for what I have. And I'm definitely truly blessed. So a huge thank you to first responders and brave men and women who sacrifice themselves all the time when things like this happen. So huge thank you. And again, I just want to acknowledge that today on September 11th. So for this week, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Arcade Fire's debut album, The Funeral. And I'm really excited that two of my closest best friends, good friends of the show, frequent collaborators, Marcello Ambriz and Nathan Wolfe, join me at the same time to talk about this. So Marcello and Nathan were actually friends before I was friends with Nathan. So technically I have known Marcello longer than Nathan has, but it's cool to kind of get that random combination together for the podcast. In fact, I'm going to be looking to do that for future episodes. I think it'll be kind of fun, especially if I can get two guests on who don't know each other and the common denominator they have is their friendship with me. So if anyone wants to volunteer for an episode like that, let me know. It'd be pretty cool, I think, to do that. But I wanted to get Marcello and Nathan on at the same time because I know they're both huge fans of the Arcade Fire, particularly this album. So we're going to dive into it track by track like we do here on the show to celebrate the 20th anniversary of what many consider to be one of the best, if not the best, indie rock albums of all time. In the episode itself, I mentioned that I wanted to share an audio clip that kind of talks about the recording process for the song "Wake Up," which is my favorite song from the band, and I forgot to play it during my conversation with Marcello and Nathan. So I'm going to go ahead and insert it now. This is the lead singer of the band, Win Butler, talking about the recording process for the song "Wake Up."
I mean, I think that a piece of, I don't know, like the song "Wake Up," the actual recording of that was the first session we went in to do essentially, we had enough money to do one session. And so we were going to do a split 7-inch of Power Out and Wake Up. Those were the two songs we had enough money and enough time to record in the session that we had. And we didn't have a drummer still at that point. So Regine essentially taught herself to play drums so that we could record, so we could do that session. She'd never played drums before until the week before that session, essentially. And so, yeah, so Wake Up, the drums on Wake Up are played by Arlen Thompson, who is in a band called Wolfe Parade, that were, in my mind, like Wolfe Parade was always the Nirvana of Montreal. The first time I saw them play, I was like, oh my God, this band is going to be scary, huge.
Yeah, so it's very interesting to me that the band started out with very humble beginnings, didn't have a lot of money. In fact, they had to have Regina, his wife, who's also in the band, learn drums in order to do the recording process, and then take whatever studio time they can get, and then eventually get a drummer who would play drums on the actual recording itself. But it is pretty fascinating to me, this how the process came together. And we dive into it deeper in the episode about the several family members from the bands who passed away during the recording process, and hence they gave the title "The Funeral," because death was very much on their minds. Well, anyways, that's enough of me rambling. This is a long episode because we have a lot to say about this album. We go over all 10 songs, so here we go. This is myself, Marcello Ambriz, and Nathan Wolfe diving into "The Funeral" by the Arcade Fire, track by track, for its 20th anniversary here on the podcast. So it's a really awesome experience for me to have two really cool friends on at the same time, who obviously they know each other very well as well. Marcello Ambriz and Nathan Wolfe, both of them regulars on the podcast, but really cool that you're both on at the same time. In the first time in a while, you guys seen each other, right?
Yeah, it's been a minute. We I think 10, 15 years ago, we went to quite a few shows together, like at least 4 or 5, I think.
Yeah. Dang, it has been a long time. It's been over a decade.
I've been married for 10 years now, so it's crazy how time flies. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's definitely a really cool experience to have us all together to talk about this album in particular, celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Arcade Fire's Funeral album, their debut album. Absolutely spectacular album, so much high praise for it. I want to refer to both of you as being kind of more the Arcade Fire experts. In fact, it was through you, Marcelo, that I even got introduced to the band. I talked about it a few weeks ago here on the show, like back in like the mid 2000s, where we were constantly sharing like MP3s of each other, bringing our hard drives to do like CD burning parties and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure I got this album from you just before the Neon Bible album came out.
Yeah.
I want to say 2006, 2007, back then when we were roommates. So before we dive into this album track by track, I definitely want to get both of your takes as what this album means for you specifically, as far as like the indie rock music is concerned.
I mean, for me, I think, so my introduction to the Arcade Fire was at K-Rock's Inland Invasion. I don't think I had ever really listened to them before then. And they were on in the afternoon and they just put on a great performance, and thought to myself, like, oh, I should really pay attention to these guys. And so I think it was sort of like there were like no rules when it came to like music, in the sense that, like, I think it was the Strokes, and like Interpol, and it was sort of like this wave of like indie music coming from like the Northeast, especially like from New York, but and clearly as far as up north as Montreal, and it just seemed like there were no rules and everyone was doing what they wanted to do. And my friend, we would make fun of Arcade Fire from time to time, and we'd call them disco pilgrims. And but I mean, just the fact that we could come up with an absurd nickname for a band like that, and it fit perfectly. It was like truly like no rules in music then.
Mhm.
So I think they were groundbreaking, much like the other bands in the conversation. Uh, that they really sort of carved their own way and did what they wanted to do, and it was like no pressure from any record labels. And yeah, I think they did what they wanted to do.
Yeah, I was trying to think of, it may have been Marcello who introduced me to them as well. Because I was on my mission from 05 to 07, and I think this album came out in like late 04, if I remember.
Yeah, the actual date is September 14th, 2004. So it's about to turn 20.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it may Albert and I may have similar, like, I think I remember getting Neon Bible and this from Marcello.
Yeah.
Because I came over to, you guys must have been roommates, but I just knew Marcello at that time. I didn't really know Albert at the time, but I came over and got a bunch of music from Marcello. And I think when I first heard, like, I was like, like the album, like, oh, this looks interesting. I'm like, and I heard about them, and I'm like, I heard they're an indie band, and I was just thinking, like, is it gonna be like this folksy guitar, acoustic guitar indie band that, are kind of like a dime a dozen? Yeah, there's some better ones, but it was like nothing I'd ever heard before at the time, and I was just like, the lyrics to the songs, just the energy from the songs, and then it's not it wasn't a live album or anything like that, but it was quite unique to anything I'd heard before. So
Awesome, very cool, very well said. Yeah.
Well, how about you, Albert?
Oh yeah, so as we previously mentioned, I mean, again, back then in the mid 2000s, we were sharing music all the time, getting together, like having all of our music on external hard drives, so then we could load it onto each other's computers. Maybe not like the most like ethical way of sharing music, but I mean, we did it. It was fun, right? It was
a good way to get to know a lot of music.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
I mean, a lot of it I ended up buying anyways, not myself. Like,
yeah.
Buying my own iPod at the time, so getting really into downloading stuff through iTunes, and then of course, maybe some sketchy illegal downloads too. But regardless, yeah. So I remember we'd get so much music, and it was hard to keep track of it because there was so much good music at the same time. But I remember hearing the song "Wake Up" on K-Rock back then, around that same time, and I just totally fell in love with the band. That song was just so unique, so powerful, so amazing in its composition. In fact, I mean, I declared it at the time like the best song of the 2000s, like the decade. So that, along with like Mr. Brightside by the Killers, is another favorite of mine. A couple other ones I could think of as well. But so where would this rank for you, both of you, Marcello and Nathan, as far as like the Arcade Fire's like category of music?
You mean in a number rank?
Yeah, number rank. I mean, this is among their best. I mean, true, it's their debut album. So sometimes when a band comes up with their first album, they usually maybe come up with better stuff in the future. But to me, like they've this and Neon Bible, I think would be among like the top tier as far as like Arcade Fire is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think so like I'll preface this by talking about this music critic that you guys might know. His name is Anthony Fantano, the busiest music critic on YouTube, whatever.
Okay.
But I just recently saw, in sort of preparation to this conversation we're going to have, he went back and re-listened to Arcade Fire to this album, and he said himself it was overrated, right? And part of me wants to agree with him, but it's sort of unfair, right? Because when you're talking about like how influential a particular band is, you can't then experience music for another 15, 20 years and then go back with with a different mindset and say like, well, it's overrated. I mean, I think it's perfectly rated as one of the better albums and bands to come out of the 2000s. So much so that they're like one of the few surviving indie bands, if you want to call that came out of that era that are still doing stuff now, and what they're doing is super important. So with that in mind, I would say, man, 1 through 10, I think they're top five. And this album in particular, I think, is probably in the top 10 for me. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
I have to be honest. You said we're maybe Marcello is, but I wouldn't consider myself an expert on Arcade Fire just because with getting married and jobs and stuff, I haven't listened to an album of theirs since Reflector, which I think was like 2013 or 2014.
Oh,
so
okay. Yeah.
But their first 3 albums I think they're just some of my favorites, and you have to kind of rank it within their albums. I personally love The Suburbs. I think that is an amazing album. That might be my favorite, but I mean, and then it's almost like a toss-up between Funeral and Neon Bible.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead, Marcel. I didn't mean to cut you off.
So I don't know if you know this, and probably something that came up in your research, but the Funeral actually was funded by the Canadian government. They took out like an arts loan or a grant. They got a grant from they got a grant from the Canadian government, and that gave them basically the means to record the album. And then it got so popular, I think it found distribution through Merge Records. Yes. And then Merge basically they've been the main distributor of it, but they had no hand in recording any of it. It's literally just Arcade Fire with the Canadian loonies and toonies, their ones, their dollars and their $2 bills funding this thing. And it's kind of like really amazing that a country has like an arts grant like that,
No, that's really fascinating. Yeah, if I actually, when we get to the song "Wake Up" in our review, there's a YouTube clip that I want to show that kind of talks about like the financial struggles that the band was going through. Like, I mean, if not for that grant, like you mentioned, Marcello, I mean, they probably don't even record the album. So yeah, a lot of the recording process for this album, I think, is very, very fascinating, and we'll definitely get to that when we get to the "Wake Up" song. But another cool fact to mention about the album, the title. My understanding was that all the band members had several family members pass away within a span of like a year or so leading up to its release. So I guess death was very much on the minds of the band members, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like 3 or 4 of them had like an aunt, and I think Win and Will Butler's grandfather passed away, if I remember. And then then a couple others. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy happenstance, but
yeah. So I mean, the songs are really deep, and it's cool to kind of dive into them deeper to get a better understanding. Because before, I think I would just hear the song and just think, oh, this sounds so cool, like "Wake Up" and "Rebellion Lies," for instance. But if you dive into it deeper, it's actually got some really cool messages and meanings to it. So let's go ahead and do it now. Starting with track number 1, Neighborhood 1, Tunnels. So let's go ahead and insert a little bit of clip and then have a conversation of that particular song. Middle of the town.
Change all the land, sleeping
that's track number 1, Neighborhood 1, Tunnels. It's interesting to me the concept that they're kind of going with, how like, you know, there's 4 songs that have the title of Neighborhood /1, and then an actual subtitle that's attached to it. That I guess it's in a way it is kind of a concept album, right? They're telling a specific story with these songs.
Nate, you want to take this?
I am not. I was unaware of that. If that is the case.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Yeah, I mean, again, I wasn't quite aware of it either before doing the research. I mean, it kind of just seemed that, like I said before, these songs just sounded cool to me. But then I guess the overall arcing theme of the album, according to some of the things that I've read, deals with like the loss of innocence, where again they take into consideration, you know, family members dying. When you lose someone close, I mean, I guess a little part of you goes with them, so again it kind of changes you from that perspective. But then also there's like the loss of innocence, and then also how you deal with certain realities in your life when you have certain perception of how things should be versus the way they actually are in the world. So that's kind of some of the general themes I think was kind of coming up with this album. And in the song Tunnels, it's kind of interesting. So according to my research, I guess it's telling like the story vaguely. This is what someone else kind of came up with. A young man's parents who are weeping in the next room, where the young man's, I guess, digging a tunnel to actually try and see a loved one or see a girlfriend or whatever, meet up with them. And they have this like, you know, naive plan of like adult life is going to be like for them. But again, there's so much like uncertainty and remoteness that exists between them. So it's just a kind of an unusual, kind of a cool sounding story of a young man who I guess perceives love and relationships to be one way, and he's like digging an actual tunnel to apparently get to this girl, right?
Oh, interesting.
So it's almost like this, like this, like a child's idea of love, or like romanticism type of thing, where
that's
like,
the
we're going to meet up and things are going to be happy, or, you know, it almost reminds me of the movie oh my gosh, Wes Anderson movie about 2 kids that run away together.
Oh,
sorry, my mind's blanking.
No, it's Moonrise Kingdom.
Thank you. Almost reminds me of that, where like there may be issues and problems, and they think like, oh yeah, we'll run away together and things will be great and they will work out, type of thing, like this naive optimism. So
there's another word for it called infantile omniscience that someone used once.
But
you know, thanks for that information, Albert. I actually didn't really know about that, but like musically for me, I'm a sucker for not choruses, but like when they sing in unison, like with Pennywise's Bro Hymn.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
That it's sort of like a very primal thing. And then like towards the end of the song, they just like, ooh, and they kind of da-na-na-na, and they all sing that together. And it actually, that's when the song starts to really pick up.
Yeah.
And then, you know, compared to how it started. So I'm just like a sucker for that stuff, man. It really is. I think it sort of taps into like a very Neanderthalic part of me, you know?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that we look at first the lyrical content, what they're talking about, but then also the musical composition, as you just mentioned, Marcello. I think it's the two combined that makes something like really unique and special. And I think that's what Arcade Fire's definitely accomplished with this particular album, as has many bands. So not to give them all the praise, but.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, like, and I'm probably saying this a little too early in the podcast, but there have been, so I've been to pretty much every Arcade Fire tour with the exception of this last one. And I have run into people that I know like fully bawling, crying during these shows because of the lyrical content and how they've connected with it. And hopefully they still have that connection with the music, but you know, sometimes we may not know the exact story behind it, but it still doesn't change the connection between the music and, you know, and us. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
No, perfect.
Yeah. And I think Marcel, I think we may have been at the same concert in Vegas. Was it
Oh,
2011 or something like that?
yeah, it was like at the Hard Rock. It
Yes.
used to be where the Hard Rock used to be at the joint.
Yes. And I can't remember if they did 2 nights there or if it was just one and we were on separate nights, but the night I went, it was Win Butler's birthday because I remember Regina played Happy Birthday on the keyboards for him. But sorry, I was just gonna go off of what you so I've only been able to see them once, but I tell people this, like, I don't even know why it felt like this or like, but like seeing them live is like, and it's probably like a cliche thing to say, but it's like a religious experience. Like I've never had this feeling with any other band live, but it's just like the energy at one of their live shows is just off the charts, and I can't, like, I have no, like I like their music, obviously, because I went and saw them, but then after that, I was just like, I'm like, well, that's the peak of live performances. I don't think I can,
Yeah.
anything can top it. Like, yeah, it's just crazy. Kind of like when Marcel was talking about people crying at the concert. I have no doubt that happens just with, yeah, the energy that you feel there. It's nuts.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah. Very cool. So let's go ahead and keep rolling on with this album. There's so much more to get to. How amazing, incredible these songs are. Let's go ahead and jump into track number 2. This is Neighborhood to Laika. Laika, right? Am I saying and pronouncing it right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, here's track number 2. Track number 2, Neighborhood to Laika, which I guess is taken off of the Russian space program, right? They actually sent a dog in space named Laika, the very first living creature to actually orbit the Earth. So, like, before USA did it.
I mean, and to be fair, it wouldn't be too much of a surprise because if you look at some of their promo photos from that time, they look like they're from like Cold War Russia time. They
Yeah.
really dig it. They're like Dwight Schrutes, just in different forms, dressing like Dwight Schrute.
Yeah.
An unrelated topic as well, but I remember on SNL when Rainn Wilson hosted the Arcade Fire plays. I mean, I believe he's a fan of the band, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Well, speaking about fans of the band, and I may be ruining your little something later on, but like talk about a lot of like David Bowie was a huge fan of them. I believe like Neil Young, Bruce Springsteen. They were like pretty. I mean, obviously, there's direct influences by those artists on Arcade Fire, but what a like a seal of approval to have those artists be like, "Oh yeah, we love your music." I can't imagine how they felt, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It must have been, like just the best feeling in the world, playing on cloud nine. If David Bowie was a fan of music I made, that'd been like, okay, cool, I can die now. So
yeah. But then also in relation to the song as well, I guess like the lyrics kind of deal with like the fact that this dog, I guess, or the character Luca, who I guess is named after that dog, is going on an adventure in space, but there's no food or water. So I mean, it's like this spectacular view you get to see from outer space, but it's almost like in a way you're not coming home type of thing. So I don't know what that was they were trying to go with this particular song. It wasn't a whole lot of information I could find. I think it was kind of left up for, I think, interpretation, but it is kind of like an unusual like thing to consider as far as like what they were trying to the message they're trying to convey in this particular song.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the lyrics here. I don't know if that's cheating or not, but
no, I any input you can give is perfect, man.
I always really liked this, like this. It's in the bridge. It says, "When Daddy comes home, you always start a fight, so the police can dance in the police disco lights." And then they repeat police disco lights. Like I think that's where my friends got the name Disco Pilgrims.
Oh,
but
okay.
but I don't know, for some reason that's such a vivid sort of you don't think of police lights as disco lights or anything positive, but it's like a good imagery to me, at least.
Yeah, that's disco with like the it sounds like kind of like domestic abuse type of lyric type of thing, and then making something like crazy positive with police dancing in their siren or their cop lights.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. So
yeah, this is one of those songs that like you can like look at the lyrics again, read them again years later, like come up with, oh, maybe this is what they were talking about. It's very unique as far as what's actually being presented. So that's why I love doing these episodes where we analyze it, talk about it, and then come back to revisit it maybe for like its 30th anniversary and something new comes to mind. So
I'm Albert, and this is a kind of a separate topic, but kind of related.
Yeah.
So I think I may have mentioned this before on this podcast, but there was this interview that I had seen with Paul Simon, and he says the one thing that a songwriter should not be is too specific.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're able to, because if he's like, if you're able to write in a very broad but like symbolic way, it'll touch the listener in different ways versus being like very specific with like, oh, today this is how I felt, and be very matter of fact, because then there's no room for interpretation and there's less opportunity for the listener to be moved by some symbolism that is near to their heart,
Yeah.
So I think in this instance, like this song, and I think most of like Arcade Fire lyrics are very, it's not super specific, but it's like very meaningful to many people because they just interpret it their own way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well said, Marcello. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into track number 3. I hope I don't totally butcher this. I mean, I'm an uncultured American swine. I don't speak French. Very
Morrissey of you to say that, by the way.
Okay, one more time. Une année sans lumière, right?
Like, yeah, une année sans lumière.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, which again translates to English to be a year without light. So let's go ahead and dive into this song now. Track number 3. So that song is really unique in that half of it's sung in English, the other half in French. I mean, we talked about it earlier. For those who aren't aware, the band is from Montreal. So again, from the province of Quebec in Canada, French speaking. Marcel, you've been to Montreal before, right?
I have a few times actually.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
The one thing that I dislike about Montreal is that some people pretend to not know English when damn well those people know how to speak English. No, yeah. I mean, Yeah, it's actually the whole like province of Quebec.
Mhm.
They, obviously that's their primary language, and for the longest time, there's always been like this. They want to secede because they don't feel Canadian. They feel very French Canadian.
Yeah.
Triumph made fun of him for that one time, right? Triumph means all comic talk.
Yeah. I mean, we should review some of his stuff. By
Oh
the
yeah,
way.
yeah. I got to get Nick on for that for sure.
I know.
Me, remember me?
Souvenez-vous, vous
Yes. Yeah.
Ah, ok.
So you're French and Canadian?
Alors,
Yes.
vous êtes francophone
So
et
that
canadien.
means you're dull and obnoxious. Yeah.
Alors, vous êtes imbécile et niaiseux en même temps. Oui. Oh, yes, I live in Quebec.
I live in Quebec. Good. It's very exciting here. It's kind of like the Bering Strait without the activity.
C'est là, ici, hein, c'est comme le détroit de Bering sans l'activité, hein?
Ok.
Okay, very good. Good answer. Tell me, does your national health care cover personality implants?
I'll be honest with you. This is one of the skips for me.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it serves its place in the album, because if you have an album that's just like high, even EDM albums have like little flow ditties,
Mhm.
and I think this is Arcade Fire's version of like, let's not completely, hit these people with like bangers. Let's kind of ease it up.
Yeah, I was going to agree with Marcel on that one. Like, I mean, I do like the, it's not a bad song, but yeah. So usually it's like, all right, if you're driving your car, or you kind of want something more of a pick me up type of thing. So it's kind of just
Yeah. I can see this song being personal for the band, like that they get to sing it both in English and French. So I mean, that for them on a personal level, it's probably good. But as you mentioned, Marcelo and Nathan, that it may not necessarily hook with a lot of the fans, particularly if it's performed live. But what I did read from my research is that apparently this song and the following song, Neighborhood 3 Power Out, kind of like coincide or kind of like are linked to each other in the sense that, see, right here in my notes, it says both tracks are thematically linked as they focus on the power outage in an urban setting and deal with the implied death of a loved one, most likely a parent in both cases. So again, going back to that concept of death, like we already discussed earlier for this album. So very much on the minds of the band, I think.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, very nice. So speaking of that next song, though, let's go ahead and jump into it then for track number 4, Neighborhood 3 Power Out. Track number 4, Neighborhood 3 Power Out. This is a really upbeat, really awesome sounding song, right? In fact, it's one of your favorites, Marcelo.
Yeah, I mean, so I have actually, I have so many. I have like 2 really like very vivid memories of this song. The first time I saw them, this song is where like Will Butler would go into the crowd, and with like this old timey football helmet and drums, he would go into the crowd and like either hit himself with the drumstick or climb up some scaffolding and hit the drums. So it's like a high it's not a high energy song that like, requires like some moshing or anything, but it's this is why I was saying like the previous song I think has its place in this album, because you go from being sort of like a very drabbish song, for lack of a better description, to a song that's just like more upbeat. And I think it's like the contrast in those two. But the second story that I have is I saw Arcade Fire for the Neon Bible tour at the Greek. They had 2 nights, and the shows almost didn't happen because there were like, this is when Griffith Park was basically on fire, and it was like, and Win Butler, lead singer, goes up to the microphone and basically says, I know I shouldn't say this because there have been a bunch of fires, and then he says, let's burn this place down, as in like, and then they go into the song, and everyone was like, oh, I don't know. But then it just like, obviously like they went directly into the song, and it just was like so high power. I've been trying to look for the video clip of it because
there's a clip of it.
There's a clip of it somewhere. I just can't find it, but it was one of my favorite moments in the Arcade Fire, my history with Arcade Fire.
Awesome, man. That's really cool. Yeah.
And this song is about an ice storm, right? That knocked out power for a week. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah. According to what some of the things that I read online.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I guess they do have adverse weather like that in Montreal, right?
Well, too, in I think it's in Reflector, the song "Month of May" is basically saying that in Montreal, like the month of May is probably one of the coldest months, and they have severe weather constantly there, and so I think they are very weather aware in that band.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the Month of May is on the Suburbs album, right?
Oh, yes, you're right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, don't worry, listeners. We're Arcade Fire experts, so
I never claimed to be so.
But I will say that I do like musically in this song. I really do like the use of the xylophone. Mm-hmm. The sound really cuts through. Everything else is like pretty heavy, but you have the ding 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 ding, the xylophone playing. I love that. I love that stuff.
No, that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Very nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next track on the album. This is track number 5, Neighborhood, for Seven Kettles.
Gonna happen then. Time keeps creeping through the neighborhood, killing old folks, waking up babies just like we knew it would.
So this particular song wasn't necessarily one of my favorites first listen through the album, but I mean, through doing this research, it actually, the meaning or the message behind it is actually pretty powerful, I feel like. So some of the things I read said that Win Butler's reflection on the inevitable passage of time is discussed in this song, that the watchpot in the refrain is time itself, and then Butler says that people feel that they can stop time if they watch it or focus on a particular moment, but regardless of whether his eyes are closed or not, the passage of time is inevitable. So again, it kind of goes along with those themes that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, where it's the loss of innocence and that we can't stop time. And, we just talked about it earlier. I mean, it's been 15 years since last time you guys saw each other hang out or whatever. So the reality is we're all getting older. And I've seen, older friends of my parents pass on. My parents are getting up there in age. So it's a very delicate life is very precious and delicate for sure.
yeah, it's just kind of crazy. The line time keeps creeping through the neighborhood. It's just like it's funny. Days seem long, but then weeks and years seem short, type of thing. So, yeah, just like I said, it's just these lyrics at the time when when saw them probably didn't hit me as much as now. Like I think that's the scariest, or like one of the scary things about doing this 20th anniversary of this album, because like before with I've been on Albert's podcast for like, oh, it's Ghostbusters, was it 40th or
40th, yeah, yeah.
and or Karate Kid. I'm like, oh yeah, the stuff back from the 80s that I grew up watching, and it's like, oh yeah, this is 20 years old, and I'm like, oh dang, that's like when I was about 20 years old, and so it's just it's like it feels more real, or instead of like something like, oh yeah, is back it's back when I was a kid, type of thing, or before I was born, type of thing. So
Mhm.
I will say that I think a lot of this, because like every day, at least twice a week, there is like an anniversary of something. Like you said, Nate. It's like,
yeah,
and I kind of chalk it up to uh, the same reason why everything is a breaking news on CNN. It's like we're on the internet all the time, and we need things to post,
yeah,
and and I think even more so now because we get to see everyone and anything and know every detail about their life because of social media. I think we're we're seeing how fast time is going simply because we're so focused on other things and other people's business that like we're probably having to be reminded like, oh, time is passing fast and your favorite album is 20 years old now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm like, yeah, we need to be constantly like I was just gonna you're just me thinking like, yeah, we need to be constantly reminded of, hey, this is now 15 years old now. I'm like, then you blink and then now it's 20 years old, type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh crap, I need to I need to take Ferris Bueller's advice. So
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Right. That's a good one. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
have you done that movie? Have you done that movie yet, Albert? I can't remember.
Not just yet. I mean, technically,
Okay.
I mean, like if I follow my schedule rules, like I would be waiting for its 40th anniversary in 2026. But sometimes I break the rules, so
Okay.
we'll see. If I touch that one, I'll definitely keep you in mind, Nathan. So,
Okay.
but very nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into track number 6. This is "Crown of Love."
They say it fits if you let it. Love was made to forget it. I carved your name across my lips. You pray for rain, I pray for blindness. If you still want me, please forgive me. The crown of love is falling from me. If you still want me, please forgive me.
So that's track number 6, "Crown of Love." This one's also a unique song too. Like it's like it has love themes to it. The trajectory of the song's really interesting. That it starts out slow and then towards the end really picks up. So I think it's a good example of like the musicianship of Arcade Fire, like we've kind of already touched on as well.
Yeah, I really like the song. It's just always I don't know, it's maybe it was during my 20s where I was had some heartache and things like that, and I just was trying to I was taking everything too seriously, and like being overly dramatic with music and things like that. So I probably uh you know it connected with me more back then, and so it's always been a favorite of mine.
Yeah, I think for me this was, I don't want to say it was like a skip, But it's so interesting because when I was listening to this album earlier, I'm like singing along to these songs. Like, I may have missed a few words here and there, but for the most part, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's so
embedded in
it's
you.
just yeah, it's just so embedded in me. It's like there's
Yeah.
no way to get around it. It's I may not know all the instrumentation, but definitely definitely like a very very simple,
Yeah.
beautiful message.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Very good. Okay, so now let's jump into track number 7, Wake Up. I'm really excited to talk about this song with you guys. So let's go ahead and dive into this one. So there's so many reasons why I love this song. In fact, I mean, one thing that we haven't even really touched on, and it kind of also really introduced me to the band, obviously it was Marcello, and then hearing it on K-Rock. And then obviously Marcello would know this. Nathan, maybe you probably don't, but local sports channel that we like, or station that we like to listen to, was the Petros the Money Show on AM 570. And they would use this song as their theme song for their radio program. So it was just so cool. Those guys love this song. Yeah. Matt Money Smith, who you may know who used to be on K-Rock many, many years ago.
Okay.
But, yeah. So again, I would hear this song. It just sounded perfect to me. It's just such a really upbeat, like, great song. And then it changes the trajectory as well, like in Crown of Love towards the end of the song as well. So the way it's crafted, I think, is well done. Really, like, musicianship at its finest, I feel.
See, this one reminds me of what Marcello was talking about earlier in the podcast, is that like that primal, like almost like chanting. It's not, I don't know how you describe it, but I don't want to sing it because I don't want to give your listeners bloody ears, but the whoa, there, I'll do that like it just like it gets me so pumped. And seeing them play this live and singing along with like a crowd of thousands of people was just like I said before, it was a religious experience, and just like it just was unlike anything. And it's just, it's like you said, it's one of my favorite Arcade Fire songs, probably top 3. So it's just
sorry, Nate, but
no, you're good.
This song is really good because I think they've done this with other songs, right? Like it starts a certain way and then it ends a certain way. And the part, so if you don't know me, and maybe I don't wear it on my sleeve as much, but I'm a big Clash fan. I love the Clash, right? So on the outro, when they said the bridge goes, "My lightning bolts are glowing. I can see where I'm going when the Reaper, he reaches and touches my hand." Like that outro part, actually, I'm not saying that they stole it, but there's a song off of Sandinista by The Clash called Hitsville Hits UK, and has a similar vibe. And I know the Arcade Fire was a big fan, or at least Win Butler was a big fan of The Clash, but I can't help but like make that. And that's I guess I'm trying to flex on my knowledge here. I'm not trying to talk down on Arcade Fire, but it's kind of cool to see like that sort of same vibe kind of find its way into a song that kind of started out as like a slow resolve, like hard tune, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's your take on this one, Albert?
So as I mentioned before, I just love the composition of the song. So again, that's what made it so unique. As Nathan already touched on it, the chorus, or like the collective singing of
yeah,
everything really cool. And even like when he goes into the line of like I guess we'll just have to adjust.
Yeah.
It's like it's perfectly like it's so simple, but it's so brilliant at the same time. It's the way I would describe it. So
yeah. So again, the first time I saw them, they opened up with it. They like, it's, you listen to it and you go like, oh, this is I mean, now they always play this last, at least the last time I saw them, but so they came out playing with it. And then I read in an interview or watched an interview with Win Butler, and he's like, if people are here, you don't want to like work up to a punch in the face. You just want to punch them in the face and just give them what they want right away. And they said that they've always played that song like they were performing it in front of like thousands of people, when like the first few shows they did were like in front of 10, 15, 20 people, so they've always treated that song as like an anthem, which is great because it's an amazing song.
Yeah, and sorry to go off of what Marcel, you mentioned earlier that David Bowie was a fan of this, or the band. Have you guys seen, I can't remember if it was at like some sort of music awards or something where David Bowie sings and plays a song with them on stage? Have you guys seen that?
Yeah, it's like a VH1 thing, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's so good. It's, I mean, for the listeners, just I'm sure it's on YouTube still. I mean, I hadn't watched it in a few years, but I think I've watched that, that clip of the whole song probably like 5 or 6 times at least. I'm a huge David Bowie fan. Got to see him live in 2004 for graduation.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was a graduation birthday present, and he played at the Pond or Honda Center. I can't remember I don't know what it's called now, but so it was just seeing two of my favorite bands together, or performers playing together.
Yeah.
It's really great version of the song. So I mean, it's not any different, but you just add David Bowie to mix anything, it gets better. So
yeah. Well, I'll definitely work my magic. I mean, I can definitely find the clip and then put it in right now, so people can hear for themselves. But
Well, also, sort of kind of going back to like influences and people that really like Arcade Fire, they're not, you could tell that the Arcade Fire is influenced by like all these like Bowie, Bruce Springsteen, and Neil Young. They're not necessarily playing that type of music, but like the artistic freedom that Bowie had, Arcade Fire had. You had like this sort of like social commentary lyrics that Springsteen usually has in his music. Arcade Fire did the exact same thing. And then in some songs, you kind of hear like a direct influence just in the vocal styles that Neil Young had on Win Butler. So it's like, so you can kind of see a lot of those influences on, in these songs, and as a little sidebar, I did text you guys the video the song Hitsville Hits UK, that you guys should listen to. I may be out of my mind saying that it kind of sounds like it, but you guys should take a listen.
I love the Clash, and I know the song. I'm just trying to, so I'll have to listen to it because I'm trying to think of the part that you're talking about. So,
oh, it's the beginning. It's around.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'll work my magic with that too. I'll put it into the episode, and then the listeners, you guys judge for yourselves if Marcello's crazy or not. But
since you mentioned Neil Young, he was my first concert ever. Was Neil Young? So
no way.
Cool. Yeah, my dad was a Neil Young fan. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it was at the Greek. So
there you go. Very nice, very nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into track number 8 now. This song is called Haiti, and then this one's very interesting too. A lot of information about this song that I didn't really know about. So let's go ahead and dive into this one. Track number 8, Haiti, very similar to the other song that I kind of butchered its name, that half of it sung in English, half of it sung in French, and this one's actually sung by Regine, right? Who wrote the song. Most of the songs I think were written by Win Butler, but again, this is written by his wife and co-founder of the band, Regine. Chassanetti? I totally butchered that last name.
Regine Chassanet.
Chassanet, thank you. Yeah. So it's very interesting to learn about her heritage, that her parents are actually from Haiti. I guess they have French and African descent in them, and they had fled Haiti for safety and for better prospects, and I guess settled in Montreal where she was born, right? So I guess this is a personal connection song for her.
As far as I understand, yeah. So
yeah, and I think they, for the most part, I think they play this song after they play Power Out.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and it's people might have their gripes about like bands, like a band like Red Hot Chili Peppers, but they're like, and I'll connect this somehow. Like, so when the times that I've seen Red Hot Chili Peppers for the first like 6 or 7 songs, they never stop playing. They play like interludes between songs to go into the next song. With Power Out going into Haiti, it's just maybe I'm tripping out, but like there's always like these crazy like sounds, and like it just so connected, and then they start playing Haiti, which is like starts out very beautiful with like an acoustic guitar. It just sounds great. That acoustic guitar sounds really good too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into track number 9, Rebellion Lies. This is also one of the big songs from this album, one of the big singles for the band as well. So let's go ahead and dive into this one. So this one I think has an interesting message as well. I think it's metaphorical in the sense that like I mean I don't think the band's telling you, hey, like don't sleep and only drink water because you'll die. I mean, you obviously have to get rest. You have to both. You have to drink water and sleep. But I think it's more of a sense of like closing your eyes to like injustices or like, you know, corruption, things of that nature. Where the powers that be want you to fall asleep and close your eyes to things that are going on. So I guess I think that's kind of message that I'm trying to get from this song as far as what I can tell. But again, this one was also used on the Petros and Money radio show on their radio program as well. So this is another song just like Wake Up that I think has a really cool message and really cool rock sound to it.
Yeah, it's
go ahead.
It's one of my favorite. It's again one of my favorite live tunes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Albert was talking about, kind of like just not keeping your eyes closed and ears plugged to what's going on around you type of thing, like actually partake in what is happening and being, instead of, it's not like you're being when someone's like doing nothing is worse than being part of the problem type of thing. It's like you're not fixing it, you're just plain, pretend to be ignorant to what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay. Did you have anything to add, Marcello, or are you good?
No, I this is one of my favorite albums. I'm sorry, songs live. If you get a chance, there is they did a show for American Express and they filmed it during the suburbs, and it was at Madison Square Garden, and this song goes off there.
Do they have a live album or like a live concert at all?
No, but they're so high profile that if they do like a Glastonbury or like Leeds or what's that other Leeds and one of those other like festivals in Europe, they always film it, so it's like I feel it might be redundant for them to have like a live album.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's just me though.
But no, I didn't like. I was listening to this album throughout the past couple weeks. I didn't realize that this was like the most popular song on the album. I thought really? I thought it was like I had like 146 million downloads or like listens or something like that, and I thought Wake Up was like the just maybe that because that's my favorite, but it was just like this album or this song is way more popular than the rest of the songs on the album, which I mean it makes sense and everything, but as just in my head I like Wake Up the best, so I figured that just plain ignorant to that.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, actually I didn't know that either. That's right. It's very interesting.
Albert, before we move forward, a little tidbit of Wake Up. It was like used in the trailer of Where the Wild Things Were, but it never actually made it onto the movie.
I remember that. That's great.
Oh, okay, so the director Spike Jonze, right? Was he also a fan of the band, or I guess maybe the studios just thought it would be a good fit for the trailer, right?
I don't know exactly what the deal was, but I mean, Spike Jonze is kind of a tastemaker on his own. Like he's so respected and respects like good art that he probably was able to just text Win Butler and say, "Yo, let me just use it. Let me just use like a different version of your song on here," and he was like totally okay with it.
I gotta say that's what kind of helped me go see Where the Wild Things Are, because I was like, oh sweet, Arcade Fire's playing on the trailer, so I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But that can work in the negative way though. So I don't know if you guys remember the Disney flop movie John Carter.
Yes, it's like a space movie, right?
Yeah. It's based on an old fantasy book that was like predates like Lord of the Rings, like from like the early part of like the 19th century, I think. They used like a random cover version of My Body Is a Cage from The Funeral. I'm sorry, from Neon Bible.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the version that's on that sounds like decent enough, but my understanding is that movie was terrible. So, so like if you're thinking, oh, they're using an Arcade Fire song to promote this movie, maybe we should go see it. Like, no, stay away.
Someone does do a really good cover of that song. Was it oh my gosh, was it who was in Genesis? Not Phil Collins. Peter Gabriel.
Peter Gabriel.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't he do a really
It
good
might have
cover
been
of
him.
that
It
song?
might have been him. Yeah, I'll do some research. In fact, now that you mention anything, I think it is his version of the song.
Okay,
Yeah, actually, I think you're right. I think that's it.
My body is a cage that keeps me from dancing with the one I love.
But sort of going back, I believe like Will Butler, who is Wynn's brother, who's no longer in the band, has done a lot of like soundtrack work, I believe.
Oh yeah, he did for her. So.
Oh, that's right, he did.
He was nominated for her, and which was Spike Jonze, correct?
Oh.
I believe so. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
So he must be a fan of their work. So.
Yeah.
Speaking of Spike Jonze, if you haven't already, you guys should check out the documentary on the Beastie Boys that it's on Apple TV.
I've seen it. Yes.
And Spike Jonze is a big part of that because he shot and directed it, and
nice.
And has been like a longtime collaborator with the Beastie Boys. But again, it's one of those things. He knows good music and surrounds himself around great artists. So it's a seal of approval on Arcade Fire, and especially like Funeral.
See, I know Spike Jonze best from the Jackass series, so I love the Jackass movies and TV show. So and
that's funny.
It just seems like he skates and he's good friends with those guys. So it's just Spike Jonze seems like an interesting guy and really cool guy. So
yeah,
very cool. Okay, so we reached the end of the album. Track number 10, In the Backseat. For this particular song, I didn't have a lot of information, but of course I want to include it. And I guess we can talk about private interpretation or whatever personal interpretation or whatever you guys think about this particular song to close out the album. So this is track number 10, In the Backseat. The final song on the album, In the Backseat. As I mentioned, I don't really have a whole lot of information from this, but what I can kind of gather is, he's singing about sitting in the backseat, or sometimes if you're sitting shotgun, you're kind of more observing the countryside, not really paying that much attention to the road because that's the driver's responsibility. It kind of reminds me of my own youth, when our good buddy Nick Turner was the first one to get his license. He drove everywhere. So it was kind of nice to just kind of sit back, relax, just see the road from that point of view. But again, I guess you can interpret it that it would mean some type of loss of childhood when the time comes for you to get your own license, and you do have to take that responsibility yourself, right? I could be completely off base as far as what Arcade Fire is talking about in this particular song, but I do think that's maybe somewhat of what the song's kind of about.
As we talked about earlier, I don't think there's any. I kind of interpreted the same type of way, kind of like a really favorite show of mine growing up was The Adventures of Pete and Pete, and that show, there's gonna be a tie back to this, but that show shows different things from childhood that that you just thought about and did. Like, there's an episode where Pete stays home from school sick, and he talks about how he can actually take the time to watch like dust particles fly like in the sunlight. And I'm like, I have a distinct memory of doing that as a kid, where you're just like, you're sitting there bored or something, or you're like not really thinking of anything, and you just, you're paying attention to these details that you miss while you're driving the car, or that you can kind of take in more and different things than what you typically, as a driver, you got to pay attention to other drivers' speed, all that type of thing. But yeah, it's just kind of like a talk of childhood and just with no responsibilities type of thing. So
yeah, totally agree with you there, Nate. I think, well, for one, I don't think there is like a wrong way to interpret any of these songs, because clearly, they're written in a way that's open to interpretation. But like musically, I think it was sort of like, they start out like pretty slow. There's a build up, and then they kind of, die out. And I think, I think they perfected it a lot in this album. But for this particular song, it just is like I feel like it's very minimal, and then it's just like a ton of different instruments, and then it dies out. I think it's a good way to end an album. Not one of my favorite songs, but it's it's a good tune.
Yeah, almost like dreamlike sounding or something like.
Yeah.
Just kind of. Go ahead.
And I think like even just like vocally, I couldn't picture Win Butler singing this. It was like,
no,
it's like perfectly assigned to Regine. I think she killed it. Yeah.
No, and Regine is also, her live is just, she's hard to take your eyes off, because she's just like, her energy and her like passion behind the music and everything is just, and just like almost like in trance, like she's just, I could just watch her all night during the concert. Is just she's great. So
again, I've seen a lot of like and heard a lot of interviews with Arcade Fire, but when usually he says that there's always music playing in the house, and someone is always playing like an instrument, and he says that if he's playing something and then somehow Regine magically appears, he knows that's going to be a good song, because she's just she's that good on picking out songs. And so even though I don't think we hear her nearly as much on this album, but I mean, probably she's a co-conspirator in all these songs with Win and everyone else.
So she doesn't waste her time with bad songs. So
yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, so that's The Funeral by Arcade Fire. I mean, there's not enough great things I can say about this album. I think it's just fantastic, and it's been a blast for me just to talk about it with you guys, who I know love the album so much, and to dive into it deeper. And as we mentioned before, I mean, years from now, we look at this album again and review it again, and a whole new like set of ideas come up. So again, this has been really, really great. So thank you, Marcello, and thank you, Nathan. Anything else to add about this album or the Arcade Fire in general before we wrap up?
If you can see him live, I would say go see him.
Yeah.
Are they doing a tour this year, or did they? I don't even know.
Well, I think this month they are performing Funeral in its entirety at Red Rocks.
Oh, that'd be a cool show. Yeah.
But I will say this about the Arcade Fire, man. I love them. Recently, Win Butler has had a weird, time in the news. You guys can Google that. It's not my place to like blast him on here, but
okay, I'll have to look that
up. Yeah. Anyway, so I think this album really sort of put them in a position where they're able to be as creative as they want to be. And, just because they were successful on their own, obviously getting a deal with like Merge Records, but there's no label head telling them to say, hey, you need a banger on this album. Like, you need at least 2 singles that you can play on the radio. It's like, they've proved that they could be successful on their own. And so they go on to do, as we were talking about earlier, they go on to do Neon Bible, and then they go do The Suburbs. And I will say about Arcade Fire, they know how to create buzz and like make it an event whenever they do something or record an album or release an album. It always feels like there's something special that they're doing. And I think, with other bands do that well too, but this band in particular, especially being one of the last surviving indie bands in my book, really still know how to create buzz and, so on and so forth. But they're one of my favorite bands. Great live band, and they're just fun to be at.
I guess I would just finally say is just how like impressive it is for their first album to be this good and this like critically praised and everything. Is just kind of like Marcello said, it's like they don't have to prove anything, it's like, oh, they know what they're doing, let them make the music they want type of thing. That's just really impressive for a band's first album to be this good. And it's hats off to them. So
perfect. All right. So if that's it, I think we're good to go ahead and wrap up. But Nathan and Marcello, thank you so much for joining me tonight to discuss this album. For anyone who hasn't heard it ever, you get on it right away. And for those who haven't listened to it in a while, give it a listen. It's really, really great. Listen all the way through. So cool. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to listeners who've been listening to the Cafe Fun Podcast. Thanks, everybody.